name is Amma Mensah. I am the founder and CEO of Rain Rum. But I went into a consulting position for an agriculture business in Ghana. So I went in initially to do a strategic review of the business, both from a commercial and social impact perspective, and ended up taking over the company, basically. So it's a 2,000-acre farm and distillery in Ghana, in the Ghanaian rainforest. So we grow cashew, we grow sugarcane, we make rum, there's a mountain, it's like a small town. And I had to kind of assess the whole business and understand how to make it make sense, basically. So in building Rain, the reason that I called it Rain is because we're building a community where everyone feels royal, and starting from the farmers all the way through hospitality industry to our customers.
Hi guys, I'm Mike Williams from Flake. It's quite interesting, a number of us didn't actually want to start a business. I'm going to say I was also one of them, so I thought I was going to be an investment banker earning millions by now. But similarly, my dad had a Caribbean takeaway / bakery, and when I was coming out of uni, having worked with him for a number of years, I wanted to do more than just have that Caribbean takeaway. I think I had enough of people coming into the shop asking for food, and the standard answer, oh, I'm in out of that in the shop. So I took the product, the patties, Jamaican patties, and decided to set up a bakery separate from what my dad was doing. We've actually been around for 12 years, so now we're South London's biggest handmade patty supplier. After 12 years, I entered a TV show called Aldi's Next Big Thing, which is probably where most people have seen us now. Long and short is we won the competition. The patty sold out in less than 48 hours. Aldi ordered another 100,000 and those sold out very quickly. And now I'm in the process of finding a manufacturer to launch full-time in Aldi.
Wow, and I'm wondering what were the kind of most common challenges, or one of the big challenges you faced, and how you overcame it?
When you try to set up a small business, there's always that challenge of finding the right people to work with. So we're in a niche market making Jamaican patties, so it's always very difficult to find people that can make the product. So it's getting people in and then having to train them for a number of months before they get used to the actual role. But then after a while, the people leave, and then you have to go about and try finding them again. So that was the probably earlier stage challenges, probably getting funding, which most of you will find. Now, talking to major retailers, the biggest problem I've faced in recent time is actually finding a manufacturer, because you'll find very quickly, if you're a small producer of a product, when a retailer tells you they need 100,000 units or 200,000 units, you won't be able to do that in a tiny kitchen. So that's been our biggest challenge, trying to convince people that our product is worth investing in, because they're there for the long term, and it actually costs a lot of money for manufacturers to develop a product from scratch, to trial a product. So before our products went into Aldi, we did 4 trials, and those are costing about £5,000 per trial for the product to actually be ready to go on the shelves. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges I've faced in the industry, because I didn't know the cost of kind of trialing products and actually finding manufacturers to make a product.
I think leading on from that, with regards to manufacturing, you talked about people, which I think is the hardest thing in any business. But for us, food and drink, to varying degrees for all of us, you're dealing with a product which is perishable. You're dealing with a product which has really strict controls and laws wherever you're selling it. For me, is alcohol, which is a controlled substance. So there's issues around moving that product around the world, where you can produce it, how you can produce it. It's really expensive, like you said, as well. And it's interesting because I think, particularly for us who, all of us come from, we come from different cultural backgrounds, and so often food and drink is something that you want to kind of speak through, right, from a cultural perspective. But then also you've got these challenges with funding and people and all of these kind of things, and it's like getting into food and drink seems like a sensible thing to do until you start doing it, and then you go, oh, maybe there was an easier business that I could have started that didn't mean that my food was going to go off every day, or I can't actually sell this in America where people are asking for it, and those kind of things. So I think those are some things that are quite specific to the industries that we that we work in.
Yeah, I would say exactly those challenges. So we have a short shelf life product with the overnight oats. If you make them yourself, they might last a few days, maybe 5 days. We want to have as natural ingredients as possible. I knew we needed to work with a manufacturer who had a very specific machine. Finding someone in the UK was so hard. Took like years, and we're now finally partnering with a manufacturer. We've gone outside of the UK, so we're partnering with a European manufacturer who has the technology and machinery that we need, but have spoken to probably close to 100, if not more, people at this point. And I think being able to convince the retailers that you are retail ready and that you've got your supply chain set up, the operations, how you're going to be transporting it from the manufacturer. Is it going to be stored somewhere? How are you going to get it to the retailer? If it needs to be chilled, you need to work with a partner for that, or frozen. It's much easier for your ambient, long shelf life, and you don't need temperature controls. But that all wasn't within my thinking in those kind of first few weeks when I was setting up. And I would say, as a tip, if you are looking for a manufacturer, you can look at the SALSA directory or the BRC directory, and they have a whole list of manufacturers within the UK that have that accreditation, and those are the accreditations that retailers will be looking for. I recently went to a manufacturing conference called PLMA in Amsterdam, and they have European manufacturers, and I found that was a really efficient way to just meet a lot of people within like a day, and they're all kind of there exhibiting. So
manufacturing seems like it's always a big thing, I think, for us in the food industry. Like when you're saying, like, when you want to scale and take it from a domestic product into a more commercial product, manufacturing is where you need to be at. And it is very challenging. Like, I have been documenting my journey for the last year and a half solid, because I really feel like having a real understanding of what business is like is really beneficial to others and also for us, because I feel like we just keep on going constantly. But when we started the business, the thought of the whole terms of the manufacturers talking and all these things, like, it wasn't something that I knew, and like I've just had to learn that as you go along. Last year was a very trying year for us with manufacturing issues, but we recently moved to an amazing manufacturer. So that has been an issue, but for me, we chose to enter the more premium market, and I did that for a reason, because in the food retail, African and Caribbean brands are really not seen in the premium sector, and that really annoys me. It really does, because our food and our culture is so rich and beautiful, so like, why can't we be there? Probably gave myself a little bit more harder work than I envisioned, but it's a challenge that I love, and we are now in over 70 high-end farm shops, butchers, delis. We launched into Whole Foods last year as the first female-owned Caribbean condiment brand, which was a real big, like, knocking down a wall. So that's a big challenge, but also cash flow. Like, we've bootstrapped. I won the Accelerator last year. That was the first bit of grant funding that I've had, and I won again yesterday. But cash flow is a real big issue, and it's something that no one really talks about that much, but it's definitely something that we feel. And also being a mum. I'm a mum. I have 2 boys. I'm also a carer as well, and like, doing that and juggling business is crazy, because we only have 24 hours, right, in a day. But I call myself the octopus, so, you know.
And outside of being an octopus, in terms of like tools and advice that you can give to kind of founders in the room, especially considering some of the challenges that you've described, is there anything in particular that you're like, you know, this is one piece of advice that I would really kind of recommend or encourage people to think about?
Yeah, can I start? Sorry. I love giving people advice. I love helping people, because when I first started, I didn't really have that many people to ask. I just kind of did learn as I went along. But I would say speak to people. Like, definitely speak. Like, you could always reach out to me, like message me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Like, I love helping people. I think there's so much power in that. And I even help people that are, like, people would seem that they are my competitors because they have Caribbean condiments, but I don't look at it like that. I want people to, like, grow our sector and think, but I just say, yeah, speak to people and just go for it, like, really, because we can all sit down and think about something and, like, all of the what ifs can come in, but I always say to my kids especially, what if it actually works out even better than you envisioned? You'll never know unless you try.
I wanted to follow on from a couple of points that have been raised. One, when you talked about going more premium, was something very intentional for me as well. So Rain is the world's first African luxury rum brand from Ghana, right? And it was really important that it is luxury, that it is African luxury, and it's challenging what does it mean for something to come out of Africa. For us, it's been amazing to kind of be in this space at the time where African music, fashion, food are now all in vogue, right? And it's just really wanting to challenge what it means to be African, to be an African entrepreneur on a global stage. And I think, you know, just to encourage anyone who is challenging existing, you know, expectations of a particular sector or a particular group, and rum, especially given, you know, its history and where it comes from, really wanting to kind of shift that narrative. And then I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that we've all talked about how hard it is and the challenges and manufacturing and all of these things. There's also some things about being in food and drink that are particularly advantageous. One is that we've learned that particularly if you have a product, that it's pandemic proof. People are always going to eat and drink. And that means that, you know, if you are going into that space there and you can create a space for yourself, you know, those opportunities will continue to exist pretty much indefinitely. And I think that's one of the things that's particularly special about food and drink. Obviously more challenging if you have a venue, but if you have a venue and a product, even better.
I would say take part in accelerator programs. We've taken part in a few, and they've been really helpful in, like, introducing us to other founders who are on a similar journey and to advisors and mentors. We've taken part in a consumer-focused one called Unrest. NatWest, my old university, LSE, also runs a program, so it'd be worth seeing if your school university offers any support. And Bread and Jam, which is a food conference where you can meet buyers, has also been fantastic. So you apply to pitch, and then if they pick you, then you get like a 10-minute conversation, and that's been a brilliant way for us to get face-to-face time with supermarket buyers from the top-tier supermarkets. And then lastly, I'd say I made the decision that it was time for us last year as we were entering our first retailers. So we launched into Holland & Barrett last year, and we'd been chosen to be part of a program with Co-op called Apiary. And that's another great program also to mention. Supermarkets offer their own accelerators. Tesco does one, Sainsbury's, Thrive, kind of focuses on helping diverse founders, and then Co-op has one, so definitely look out for those two. They offered really tailored kind of grocery related support, but we realized last year when we kind of started to have this interest from retail that it was time for us to raise our first round of investment. Before that I was a bit hesitant and I wasn't sure if it was the right time, but actually doing that and doing it through a crowdfunding platform we raised with Seeders, and brought on 279 investors, and they've been really, really supportive. A lot of them have experience within food, and I couldn't have imagined like the positive kind of outcome from their support. But then also sharing your raise publicly, it raises your profile, and we had even like retail opportunities come off the back of that. So I would say I even wish that we'd raised a little bit sooner in our journey, and kind of after that has helped us make decisions more quickly where we've needed to. So
I would say the same, really, in terms of going to all these kind of accelerator events and networking. For me, networking has been the absolute key. So I've used LinkedIn extensively. So one of the things, I didn't even know what a buyer was last year. Honestly, I didn't, because I was selling patties within a niche sector, which is a Caribbean takeaway sector. So when I discovered what a buyer really was, so I'd go on LinkedIn, I'd literally type in the supermarket, so say Asda, buyer, and then I'd add literally everyone that came up, even if it wasn't my category, and then started messaging people. Same for Tesco's and a list of other places. But yeah, networking through LinkedIn has been very successful for me, even on Instagram. So when we had our channel, ITV News channel feature, I'd message one of the reporters on ITV through Instagram, and they'd seen our videos of what we've been doing, and then they came down. So for me, networking has been absolute key. In terms of raising money, I've always just gone to my bank, because your bank knows you best. They know how your business is operating because they can see money coming in and out. Raising money is being key, so I've used that, gone through my bank. But again, everything that these guys have said, definitely worth listening to.
I'd love to open it up to the floor. I'm conscious people might have some questions that they would love to ask these brilliant people.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing. Thank you for your journey. I think I'll ask the question around the networking aspect of it, because we hear that term about network is your net worth and just network, and that's so important. But I feel like there's more to it, specifically from your experiences in building relationships with people, whether that's stakeholders and customers. So I'd love to hear your specific insights around networking and building relationships that's really made a difference for you.
I think networking is amazing. I love it. I network all the time with the Founderfest. With anything Founderfest are doing, I network a lot there. I think it's really powerful. I think some people can find it really overwhelming, because going into a room when you don't know nobody can feel really scary at times. But I always say that there's probably loads of people that are actually scared and now we don't realize, and no one knows that you're scared, so just go in and do it. I network a lot with my customers. So by doing a lot of markets and festivals and events, I've been able to network with my customers and have that direct contact with them and build a great community. And our business success is a lot to do with our community. So I think networking is really powerful.
I think, like you said, a lot of people find networking scary, and part of the reason for that, I think, is that there seems to be a bit of a mystique around what even networking means as a word. It's just meeting people. If you just pull it down to its base form, it's just finding ways to meet people and connect with them, and that's it. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got about networking was to lead with empathy. And so you might be trying to reach out to someone on LinkedIn or something, and then you look at their profile and you try to find out as much about them as possible, and you might find out you support the same football team. And sometimes there's ways of, and then you meet them and then you can strike up a conversation about Arsenal or Chelsea or whatever it is. And it's just finding ways to speak to people on a human level is probably the best advice that I've had in networking.
I think using LinkedIn, as you said, Mike, is super important. If you're going to an event or after an event, I found it super helpful to just connect with people that I know I'm going to be meeting or that I have met. When we were raising investment, I would go to panels where I knew investors would be speaking, just chat to them afterwards, connect one-to-one, and then follow up. And then, being connected, I guess they'll be able to follow your journey. And I think sharing any amazing achievement or milestone or big challenge that you've overcome, especially on LinkedIn, where the organic reach of the post, I think, is fantastic, surpasses Instagram in my view. So I think that's just been a great way to keep all those people that you've met updated on all the successes on your journey. And then if you see something that you think might be useful to them, then keep that relationship alive and share that with them.
Yeah, I think for me as well, when I try to network with people, I've always gone with a purpose, so I don't just reach out for no reason, but also think about a value proposition. What could you also do for them? Because then people are more intrigued if you can actually offer something to them. When I go to events, I'd often know who's going to be at the event, whether it's a speaker or investor, whoever it is. I'll do some research beforehand, and I will go knowing, okay, my aim for that day is to meet that one person. So despite who I connect with throughout that day, I always make sure I'm at the right place at the right time, and that's definitely worked out for me in many ways.
The question I've got for all of you, if you could just take 30 seconds to each answer, is how do you go about finding product market fit? Have you got any tips for how you did it?
Mine was really easy. We had a Caribbean restaurant and everyone loved our sauce. So that was our reason for going into that industry, because we had a need for it. We had an ask from customers that were like, we're willing to buy this. Like, we love it. So it was more easier for us. We didn't really go around looking for a market fit. And I actually don't look for a market fit. I do something like I bring what people love, and I bring that to market in the most authentic way possibly, the best quality, and that's how I approach that.
For you, your data came from experience, right? So you were able to feel out the market. For me, it was completely different. I didn't launch it because I was really passionate about this thing. I looked at the resources I had available at my farm, and I looked at the markets. So we were growing cashew, we were making rum, we were making brandy, we have, an ecotourism resort. I looked at all of the different things that I had that I could monetize to achieve a purpose, which is to empower people, and particularly farmers. And I looked at what I thought was going to make the most commercial sense. And so we ended up zooming into alcohol, and I understood that in the spirits world, you had like the whole gin boom. People in the room probably love gin and tonic. And so a lot of people were then still 10 years later launching gin brands because they weren't looking at the data. When you look at the data, I could see that from about 5 or 6 years ago, gin was in decline and rum was growing at twice the speed of gin, but it hasn't reached its boom in the same way as gin has, right? And then you look at different segments within that, within rum, within gin, within whatever, and you go, okay, so rum typically has been rum and coke, and people drink it as a cheap product. And then I looked at it and I saw that actually people are moving away from like white rum, and it's more about spiced rums, and it's more premium rums, and it's aged rums, and it's all of these things. So I spent a lot of time and a lot of money just understanding what the market is. And I think it depends on the type of business you're trying to build, create, and grow. If you're looking for something that is going to be commercially viable on a large scale, either within a particular country, market, or globally, that's really important. If you're launching a business because you're doing it out of passion, and you have a community that you can continue to serve, then that may not be as important, as long as you know that you're serving that particular small community. But whatever it is, you have to ask those questions, and it comes down to finding data and insights.
A key thing for me was when I was having this idea while I was still working in the city, I knew I loved overnight oats, and I could see that overnight oats were a super popular recipe online. I saw a stat that they were the 4th most Googled recipe, which gave me confidence. But look in other markets, and is the idea validated there? So there were brands like Mensah and Brecky in the US who've created the category of overnight oats, and it sits alongside dairy and yogurts. And they were doing really exciting things, like really super cool startups. And I thought, if it's worked there and they're stocked in all the major retailers, they were generating tens of millions in revenue, then it became my plan to do the same in the UK and be the UK's first dedicated overnight oat brand. So of course you want to then make sure that in your market there's interest. So I would start as small as possible. If you can make the products yourself, you might have to get your kitchen checked and get a food hygiene rating and other things. But if you can then sell at markets, the Shopify online store is quite easy to set up, and you can start to see people ordering it organically. And then I think once you started to get that under your belt and you have lots of orders, whether that's from online customers or from independent shops that are near you, coffee shops, things like that, then definitely start to gauge the interest of retailers or larger food service chains, if that's your angle. Going to these like buyer pitch events and having those conversations, or reaching out on LinkedIn or emailing them and seeing if there's any interest. I think you'll quickly, after you've reached out to quite a few, you'll start to see how interested are people in this, and will it be a viable business?
For me, it was just following trends. So at the time when I started, it was probably a year before that, like Levi Roots had won Dragon's Den. And then you had people like Usain Bolt, who was doing a lot in track and field. So I saw that there was a trend for Caribbean food, and it was quite booming. And then in the world food aisle, in supermarkets, you start to see a lot more Caribbean food. The reason why I took patties to make a business out of that is simply because I saw patties in the retailers, and there's only 3 big names at the time. There was only 2, and even within the time that I've now come onto the market, only another one's come onto the market. So yeah, I just followed trend, but also I'm trying to fill a gap. So you often don't see a patty next to a Cornish pasty, even though it has a right to be next to it. So I'm now trying to convince retailers that a patty should be front and center next to a Cornish pasty. So I think I've got a purpose.
Lots of helpful tips there. Hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, we've come to the end of the panel.